From my years of being in this industry, I've seen so many people have full-time jobs and they would legitimately learn how to produce from like midnight to 6 a.m., sleep 2 hours, and then go work all day. If you want it that bad, you're going to make it happen.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Headliner Mindset Podcast. Today's guest has over 20 years of experience in the music industry and has worn almost every hat possible, from being a promoter and throwing his own shows, to running a blog and merch company, to managing artists, and then ultimately becoming an artist himself, touring the world many times over, earning himself the title Papa Dubstep. This is Bear Grillz.
Wow, way to make me feel really old, 20 years.
Bro, welcome to the party.
Yeah.
We met a long time ago. We met back in the day.
I don't even remember. I was going through our notes and I don't even remember. Was it through Icon or was it through?
This was before I was a part of Icon. You were promoting shows as Into the AM. You were booking artists. I was just getting into management. I think I was working with JSO and Chris, Technique Management, and I think it was Laser Tag was the artist.
Laser Tag, wow.
One of those guys went on to become Schoolboy and had his whole dubstep project. That was the first time we met, I think, in San Diego. You were a promoter, just a young buck throwing shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's such a cool place to start, because what I love about you is you've played almost every role that you can. Like, you had Into the AM, which a lot of people probably don't know. I mean, that's gone on to become a really big merch company now.
Yeah, I think that I started that in like 2009. I threw a show with Steve Aoki in Long Beach, and that was my first EDM show. I want to say it was like 2009. And I was running this club, running this night, promoting. So, knew who Steve Aoki was, paid him like $500.
Yeah.
The show just completely sold out, like 2,000 kids. And the energy in the room was so crazy. It was like unlike anything I've ever seen before. So immediately after that show, I went to my team. I was like, we need to start a EDM brand and we need to start booking EDM. Because at that time, EDM was still sort of like forbidden. Not every venue would allow it because everybody did the drugs and things like that. So
yeah, it was a different era. It was exciting. It wasn't big yet. It wasn't commercialized. It was very like punk rock. It was underground. There was this buzz. There was this excitement because it was all new.
Yeah,
that was a cool time.
Yeah. So Into the AM spawned from that, and I went on to book shows for like 8 markets across the West Coast. I did the first EDM shows ever in Chico, California, Eugene, Oregon. I had San Diego. I did stuff in Santa Barbara. I was basically all up and down the West Coast and all the college markets.
Yeah. Yeah. And so before you were doing that, we also both went to the same college. We both went to UC San Diego. Go Tritons.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
so
funny.
I love that as well. I don't know if we were there at the same time. I think you were there we might have been there at the same time.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
You were like a couple years ahead of me. But, you went the typical college path, and like myself, made the decision not to really pursue any of those typical career paths that most of our friends did, or that, most of the other, 4-year graduates were. Take me back to that moment where you decided to go pursue a career in music rather than whatever you were studying in college.
Yeah. So I tell people I have a pre-law degree. I have a public law as my like BA, political science from UCSD. And I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to do practice law and on the business side. So I wanted to get my like joint MBA and I was like so ambitious as a student. I actually really hated school. I was better at sort of finagling my way into good grades, because with political science degree, I could like, just BS my essay because I knew enough about the topic. Anyway, so in high school, I would do these like crazy backyard ragers, like straight from a movie. My parents were really cool. My neighborhood was cool. All the kids would show up. They'd hand over the keys, and there'd be 500 kids raging in my backyard.
Oh, hell yeah.
I was that guy in high school.
I was that guy too. I was that fucking guy. I was throwing massive high school parties. And I always tell myself, I'm like, in like a parallel universe, I feel like I actually was destined to be a promoter, because I was like, I was that dude, and I was like the guy throwing the fucking party. So I love that, man. That's so cool. Those were fun.
Yeah, so much fun.
High school parties were the best.
Yeah, so when I graduated with my BA, I was going to go to law school, study for my LSAT, so the law school admission test. Most kids take a year off and then do the test and then go to law school a year later. So I couldn't afford to live in San Diego anymore. So I, told my parents, said, "Hey, I need to come home, I'm from Long Beach. I need to come back and live with you guys for a year." And they said, "Well, if you're going to come back, you need to get a job." So what did I do is I found a restaurant in Long Beach, and the owner was willing to essentially move all the tables and let me throw a like DJ raver. And at that time it was all top 40. EDM wasn't a thing. This was in like 2005, I want to say.
Yeah.
And so I just got all my friends, and it's funny because the way I promoted it was I would send an email blast, because back then we didn't have text messages. And so I would send an email to like 20 of my friends, and those 20 friends would send an email to their friends. And I would have 600 kids show up, all paying $5 a head. So I did this show, the first one right out of college. I made like $3,000.
Wow.
And, to a college kid, I mean, still today, that's still a lot of money. And I just spiraled the business. I just kept growing, and I grew for the next like 7 years into what I just talked about, into the AM, and how I was doing all those markets. And then I got into management because my thought was, if I'm booking all the biggest DJs in the world, like Steve Aoki and all these guys, if I managed kids that I can put as direct support for those DJs, I can get them to get big as well.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my thought. But I also had a blog with Into the AM, because obviously you remember, but Gotta Dance Dirty was like the blog for dance music. Like anything dance music happening, it was Gotta Dance Dirty.
Yep.
So we started a blog. I was managing DJs, and then through me sort of touring with some of the DJs that I managed is when I kind of decided I think I want to throw my hat in the ring as a DJ.
You were very, very business minded the whole time, right? And I always love seeing how artists that come from a background of promoting just understand the business better. It's like you actually know what it takes to sell tickets. You understand that like that is a big piece of the economy of how especially the DJ circuit works, is like you got to sell tickets. So coming from that side of being a promoter, you understand that. And it sounds like you were just seeing opportunities, right? If you start managing DJs, like, well, there's an opportunity there to, kind of scale and take a percentage of what they're doing. So tell me about when you decided to be an artist, though, because that definitely is like a shift from being behind the scenes to actually being like, hey, I'm gonna get in the ring and do this shit myself. That's kind of a big step.
Yeah. So like I said, I was managing some DJs. I was taking my 15-20%. I said, I think I could do this. I just thought that I knew enough people in the industry that would be a support. Because I think as a DJ, especially for a young DJ, you think, oh, if I just make really good music and hits, everything will take care of itself. But I knew that wasn't the case. I knew that marketing was almost, as big a factor as the music you're putting out. So that's kind of why I did the whole Bear Grillz hidden thing, because everybody speculated, who's under the mask? Is it Skrillex? Is it, who is it? Blah, blah, blah. So I kind of approached it in a marketing sort of business standpoint, that the music was going to be on par with everybody else. It wasn't going to be like, transcendent. Like it wasn't going to be something that everybody had never heard before. It was going to be dubstep, and it was going to be a brand that was very strong. And I think that really worked for me at the beginning, because back then social media wasn't as big of a deal as it is now. And like the kids that I manage today, coming up today is so different, because they have to essentially be on social media and posting every day and being sort of like these influencers. And if that were the case for me, I don't think I would have made it. So I kind of just decided, I'm going to step in the ring and figure it out. And because I was sort of well connected and I got help, and I sort of knew the ins and outs, like you said, as being a promoter and what sells tickets. Because like I said, a lot of kids think, oh, I got 1 million plays on SoundCloud, that's going to translate into selling tickets. But no, listening to music that's free versus somebody actually paying their hard-earned bucks to go see you is a big difference.
Yeah, something that we talk about at the Cult Creatives, the marketing and branding agency that I work at with Chris White, is that the music is the soundtrack to the movie. It's just a piece of it, right? Yep. And we are living now more so than ever in a phase of needing to be really making movies to really have an active and engaged fan base. You got to have the whole movie. It sounds like you were thinking about what the movie was from the very beginning.
Yeah. And the thing I see today, especially agents, their agents are signing artists almost exclusively because they have that following on social media rather than they have the following of their music. And it's almost become more important today because obviously a bigger following on social media will translate to people wanting to see them versus not necessarily knowing what their music is.
Yeah.
Which is hard because a lot of people come up, passionate about the music. They don't want to have to do that social media side. Yeah. But unfortunately today you have to.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Until we caught up the other day, I didn't realize that you were still managing artists also on top of being an artist and touring and just being out there grinding and hustling. So I'm curious about your perspective on really what it takes for an artist to blow up. What is your strategy to helping artists grow, knowing that social media is important, knowing that booking agents are looking really at social media numbers because that is what is a good indicator of what's going to sell tickets, right? So I don't know, what's your approach to growing an artist in 2023?
Yeah, so for me, it's like a variety of things. Obviously, a strong social media presence, mostly concerning with the brand of the artist, not necessarily the look of how they look. That to me, that doesn't matter. But I'll give you the case of Morte. He's an artist that I manage who is just absolutely insane. I actually came to him. I saw him on social media, on Twitter. People were talking about him because through my Bear Grillz Twitter, I always see people, talking who are the new cool producers. So I went to his social media and I saw that his branding was great. Morte, it's sort of like obviously means like dead. So he just had a very compelling brand that I loved, and I saw people sort of engaged with it. Then I went to his music. I saw that he had really good music that was resonating with, my scene, with the dubstep scene.
What was it about the brand that made it interesting and engaging?
I thought it was just memorable. I think a lot of kids who are trying to get into dubstep, like I said, I think they focus so much on the music and they want their music to be better or similar to what all the popular dubstep is now. But like I said, I don't know. Obviously, it matters to sort of have your own sound and be known for that. But for him, it was just, I love the brand. I feel like I have this thing inside of me that I can tell, oh, this is going to be good because I love this brand. It was cool. It was edgy. It was dark. It was exactly what I thought kids in the dubstep scene would sort of relate to.
Yeah. Let me know if you agree with this. I feel like a lot of dubstep and bass music artists, very like sound design heavy artists, are really making music to flex how good they are at producing. It's like they're making music for other producers to be like, look how good I am at producing, rather than making stuff for their fans.
Definitely. There's definitely a lot of those artists out there who are like producer.
It's like a dick measuring contest.
Yeah, but once you get past that, like I tell all my kids, I said, look, you don't ever compare yourself to anybody else because you're never going to be them. You just have to worry about your situation and your dollars. That's how I've been successful, is I don't go out there and think, Bear Grillz has to be the next Excision or the next Selenium. I just go out and do everything I can to keep growing, essentially, go, whether it's being at a show and going into the crowd and shaking hands and taking pictures with people and meeting people. That's kind of like how I sort of feel like I was successful, because early on, I would literally go to my merch booth and just sit at the merch booth the entire show before I went on and let people come and say hi to me, because I always felt like promoters and fans, when you come into town, especially, they don't say, oh, Bear Grillz is coming back. They say, oh, RJ's going to be in town. We got to go. And that's another thing I tell all my kids is like, you go to a show, the first thing you do, when you see the first security guard, when you're walking backstage, you shake his hand and you introduce yourself, because you want to go through this entire building and let everybody know what kind of person you are and be memorable. Because promoters are booking 1, maybe 2 shows every single week. It's just a turnover every week of a different artist, right? But if you actually take the time and introduce yourself and say, thank you for booking me, this is how I pay my bills and this is how I eat, and I appreciate you, and let's make money together and let's grow together, that promoter is going to remember you and want to book you again.
Dude, I love that so much, man. Thank you for bringing that up. And especially also with the fans. I think that goes so far, of taking the time to meet your fans before the show, after the show. I think a lot of people are like, all right, I'm getting paid to be here for the hour, so I'm going to show up, I'm going to do my DJ set, and then I'm going to go back to the green room and I'm going to finish my drinks and I'm going to go party with everybody backstage. And, I just had the pleasure of hanging out with Hades. She was just on my podcast like a month or so ago, and she was just out here in Austin. So I got to go and hang out with her and go to her show. And she stayed for hours after. She talked to every single fan. It was so cool to watch, because there was just this deeper bond and connection, and seeing people come up and giving her gifts and giving her little toys and stuff, but then also telling the stories about how much they were impacting her life. I was like, that's what it's all about. Like, putting in that extra effort, going that extra step above and beyond. You're out here to create fans, right? Hopefully you are, not just sell tickets, right? But these are human beings. So I love that you bring that up.
Yeah, 100%. I just think I stay after, obviously not every show, because a lot of times I have to run straight to the airport, but to make that connection outside of just music, because like I said, if you live in whatever city, say you live in Portland, there's a EDM or dubstep show every week, every weekend. And if you have a finite amount of money where you can't buy a ticket to every show, how do you create an advantage over everybody else? You have to make those connections that are outside of music. Like, of course, if they're already at your show, they connect with your music and they love that. But if you can expand that connection to like a personal level, then you have them for any show. Like I've been playing shows for 10 years, and I still have connections with people that I remember making from my very first shows. Whoa. Because I went out there and talked to them. And now, like, some of them that I've made over 10 years are in my fantasy sports leagues now, because we're friends, because we've all grown together, and they'll never miss a show because now we're friends. So
I love that. That gave me chills, bro. I love hearing that. Like, you are just a fucking gem.
But I preach that to everybody, and everybody I've ever managed. Like, I actually started managing Sippy, who I know is on your show. I was managing Wooly and company at a certain point, and they're all have been on a Bear Grillz tour. And that was my thing. It was like, you need to go out there, get off this bus, go out to the merch booth. I know they're all not going to know you, because at that point they were sort of like the opener. And I made them stand next to me. And every time somebody would say something, I would say, this is, so-and-so, and this is so-and-so. They're on a tour as well. And just because you always need to be thinking about those little edges, like, I can't tell you how many venues I play across the world where when I go out to the merch booth or go out into the crowd, they're like, do you need security? I'm like, no, I'm good. Mm-hmm. And they're shocked that I'm actually going out there to hang out. They're like, wow, I've never seen this before. Every other DJ just comes in 5 minutes before their set, drinks, plays a show, and then leaves. Yeah. Like, think about that as a business perspective though, right, Nick? Like, if you're a business owner, say whatever, you're a business owner, is that all you're going to do? You're going to, like, if you're at a convention for whatever, say you own knives and it's a knife convention, are you just going to sit at your booth and let people come to you? No, you need to go out and network and get people talking about you and being memorable.
Yeah. And you know what it is? This is experiential marketing. And I've talked about this a couple times. Like last year, I almost quit coaching twice. I was just like burnt out. I was overwhelmed. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And what I was looking at, I actually got really excited about potentially pivoting into this whole industry called experiential marketing. And that's where brands, as a brand, so much of the advertising that people are doing is digital. It's online, right? Let's make ads. Let's make content. Let's put our stuff out there. But like we are so oversaturated with with digital content, so our brains just don't really even pay attention to it. It's just in and out. Maybe something really cool comes along that we pay attention to. But what I love about this world of experiential marketing, it's when brands go out and they create experiences, right? It's like you go to Coachella and Visa is sponsoring like the VIP lounge. And so you go and you have an experience in the VIP lounge, but the brand is associated with it. And I've never thought about it this way, but that's exactly what you guys are doing is you are creating experiences where a fan gets to shake your hand and meet you and say hello. It is no longer just like, oh, I saw an ad and it's living in my mind. It's like, this is living in my heart. This is living in my body. I am having an emotional experience and that gets stored and it's memorable. It's creating memories. So now I am way bigger of a fan because I've had this emotional experience.
It goes with any product. I look at us DJs as almost like a product because at the end of the day, sure, we have different mashups and edits, but we're all essentially almost playing the same dubstep songs, right? Yeah. But what separates us? It's our branding and that personal experience that we're giving those people. It's like, what separates you from liking Coke versus Pepsi? If they taste very similar, it's going to be some other outside influential factor that's going to, make you sway either way.
You know what it was me drinking Pepsi when I was 12 years old with my best friend skateboarding, like building ramps in his garage. And it was like, they just drank Pepsi, but I have this childhood connection to it. So like, I have experiences, emotional experiences that are connected to the brand. So I will always choose Pepsi.
Or there was Cindy Crawford when we were young. That was a big Pepsi thing, right? It's like, we love Cindy Crawford when she was doing those Pepsi ads. But yeah. So that's kind of what I tell all my guys. Like you have to go in there and draw every single ounce of what you can get out of that show. Yeah. It's not just showing up and playing and leaving. It's not.
Yeah. I love that, man. I love that. So I'm still blown away that you're managing and touring and you have a kid and a wife and a family. Like, how do you do it all? Because that's a lot. Like, I'm just trying to run one business right now, and I'm not touring every weekend. You seem like Superman to me. You are holding a lot. You're doing a lot. So I'm really curious about, like, how do you get it all done? What kind of tips and advice do you have for being, like, hyper productive?
Well, I also run my own label, too. You forgot.
Oh, okay. Just throw that in there, too. Sure.
Yeah. So I don't know. For me, it's just about organization. Over the years, I've always sort of managed myself. I've never had a manager as Bear Grillz. And I think over the years, I have just always had to sort of manage myself. So my memory has just been tested over and over and over years because I would have to know. Everybody always freaks out when I'll be at a show and they'll say, oh, I saw you in Omaha in 2016. I'm like, I remember the show. It was at this venue. It was this date. And it's because over years, I've sort of trained my mind to have a better memory because I have to know, my flight's at 8 a.m. I have to go here. And I've always just sort of run my schedule. And it's really prepared me to have just a hectic schedule when I'm home. Because prior to the pandemic, I was probably touring, 11 months out of the year. So I was gone. And I always had to know on the fly what is coming up, what flights, what shows, who's the promoter, where's the contact. But after the pandemic, I essentially only play shows on the weekends now. So Monday through Thursday and most of the time Friday mornings is all dedicated to like outside DJ stuff. So I wake up at like 5:30 every morning. I'll go on a walk. I walk like 6 to 8 miles every day just to sort of get, into the mood and get outside, get some sunlight, get my mind right. And then I'll just dive into it. So all 6 of my artists that I manage are on major booking agencies. So it's a lot of back and forth with all the agents. Thankfully, it's all emails. So even if I was on the road, it's all sort of just emails. I have a day-to-day manager who sort of does all the advancing for the show. So that part of it which is probably the most time consuming as a manager, is, sort of divvied off, delegated for me. And other than that, it's just mostly answering questions and sort of, preparing them for shows, because obviously when one of my guys says, I'm playing Stereo Live in Dallas, I know all the people there because I've headlined there, 7 times in the past. So it's just sort of making them their connections and showing them how to properly market themselves and, putting together the release schedule. And then if they want to release on a certain label, it's really easy because for example, I was speaking with Bianca from Bass Rush, who runs all of Bass Rush for Insomniac, this morning because one of the artists wants to put out an EP. So it's just about having those connections for those guys, because what I tell people and what I tell my guys is, like, all of us artists are no better or less producers than everybody else. It's about having the opportunity to get that shot. And how do you get that shot? It's by having the right team, because there's so many amazing artists out there who deserve the shot, but don't get the shot because they don't have the right team. So for me, it's about giving my guys who deserve the shot, if that makes sense. Yeah. Because to me, it's all about the team.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you say having the right team, I guess what makes up the right team?
For me, it's myself, because I have the years of experience and connections. For example, when Morte and I decided to work together, I made a phone call the second we got off to Corson. I know you know Leo Corson because he's involved with Icon. Yeah. He's a professor there. I made a call literally the second I got off, and I said, yo, I signed this kid. He's good to go. And what happened? Within 24 hours, he was signed on to Corson. And within 6 days, he was playing Forbidden Kingdom Festival in Orlando with Insomniac as his first show ever in the United States.
Damn. So what kind of advice then do you have? Because I think for a lot of people, obviously having an RJ, a Bear Grillz in their corner who just has all the connections and be like, yeah, no problem, let me pick up the phone and make that call. Like, that's the dream. I guess until you have somebody like that in your corner, what kind of advice do you have to get there? And like,
I'll tell you, so I actually get a lot of up and coming DJs who are trying to break into the scene that ask me to, get on a call and sort of give them advice. And I'll tell you the advice that I give them is because, like, it kind of always reverts back to, they think if they just push music out and the music is cool, it's going to all take care of itself. Which what I tell them, I said, no, you have to essentially make yourself so hot that you don't have to go out and look for a manager. The manager is going to find you. If you put yourself in a position where you have the Spotify monthly listeners, you get those big, you get your followers up, you get your engagement up, they're going to find you. But most of the kids who I talk to, they say, well, I have an agent, but my agent's not pushing me. And I have to literally tell them, you are the product. You need to make yourself the best product you can be, because a manager and an agent is going to look at you as a dollar symbol. If they can't make money off you, why are they going to lift a finger for you when they have other artists that they can make money off of?
Yeah. And you got to make yourself valuable so that they have something to sell. Because even if they are out there picking up the phone, trying to get you booked, it's like, it's also up to the promoter ultimately to say yes and to make an offer. And so if you're not bringing the heat and adding value and making yourself a hot commodity, then that's a hard sell for them to make. And they're just like, maybe they can pull some favors and get you on some shows, but then you're playing shows and you're not selling tickets. And then that's not helping your relationship with the promoter or having the promoter want to book you again.
Yeah. And it's like, you have to essentially fake it till you make it. I love that saying because it's true. So what I tell my guys is, look, you need to go out when you play a show and you need to make it look like it was the greatest time of your life, and that everybody in attendance had the best times of their lives as well. And you need to somehow document that and put that on social media, because that is infectious. And in our industry, word of mouth is everything. Because if you go and play a show, say you're, as a local support, and a lot of these guys are just essentially still local support. But if you go and slay that show and make it look like you're just killing it and everybody had so much fun, those kids at that particular show are going to go home and say, dude, I saw Nick. He was so sick. I can't wait. He's also from our city. And then you just literally have to take that success that you have in that city. And what I tell my guys, it's like, you're building a business in every single city across the world. And you can't expect to have success the very first time you go there.
Yeah. That's like what we call just the perceived brand value, right? Creating the perception that like, yo, this is somebody you want to fuck with. This guy is hot. This guy is up and coming. And it's like, yes, you got to back that up. But at the same time, you can really crank the volume up on that and create the perception that I'm the fucking man and I'm here to bring it and everybody loves me and like get on this train because we're taking off.
That's a great point, because I tell all my guys that as well. I say, look, Excision is Excision, not because he's head over heels better producer than you. He's Excision because everybody knows he's Excision and everybody perceives him as Excision, the biggest dubstep act in our world, right? So you have to essentially make yourself perceived as something bigger than you are, because at the end of the day, we're all just dudes and girls, pushing buttons to play music. But the difference is that we're perceived as, he's perceived as Excision and you're perceived as a local DJ at this point. So you have to sort of figure out how to make yourself perceived in a bigger light. And that's hard though.
Let's talk about that real quick, because I think there are a lot of people out there that are the local DJ. They're coming up in their local scene. They're getting booked as the opener or maybe the main support. And a lot of people get stuck there. And a lot of people are like, hey, how do I want to get to that next level, but I'm getting these I'm like the $300 opener or the $500 opener or the $100 opener. And the promoters see me as that. And so I think that's where we get into this idea of the sort of the perceived brand value, where I'm oftentimes advising people like, hey, you want to actually maybe back off of playing those local shows because you're creating this perception that you only are an opener. What kind of advice do you have for people that are in that situation? Because I think there's a lot of them.
I think you hit the nail right on the head. Is like, as a local DJ, you think that the more shows you play in that city, the bigger and more you're going to become. But it's actually, in my opinion, the reverse result of that. The more shows you play, the more they see you. They're just like, oh, it's just blah, blah, blah playing. I don't need to go see him.
Yeah.
And what I tell all my guys is, like, there's some of my artists who started as like a local DJ. I say, back off, say no to every show and play one solid show that who has a big headliner and you're going to get the looks, and that's it. Cut it off.
Yeah.
Because especially as a promoter, if I'm a promoter in a certain city and I know I have my go-to local support, I'm just going to keep skinning that sheep every single time, because I know he's there or he or she is there and they're going to be available.
I feel like that is a very common train of thought, and I see it go both ways. I oftentimes talk about the difference between Nightmare and Slander, who are both managed by the same management company, but kind of took two different approaches. And I think more so that was because Slander they came from the college DJ circuit. So they were just playing like frat parties and local parties. And, we booked them for $200 to close out, Control one night. And obviously it still worked for them. So it's not that like that didn't work. They backed it up with having some pretty major hits behind them. But with Nightmare, they took a completely different approach, and they're like, look, you're just going to put out music for a year and we're going to turn down every single offer until those offers start getting big enough that, I think the first show was a headlining show for $5,000 instead of an opening slot for $500, and got, booked at EDC like right after as well. So it's like the basic economic theory of supply and demand, right? If you hold back the supply and you're not, creating an overabundance of supply, then that allows the demand to go up and the price to go up.
Yeah, and it's hard though as a local DJ, because you want to play. The human thought is like you want to play as much as you can to grow, but in reality, it's actually a negative. And I see that a lot with even like national touring acts who they accept every offer that they're getting, because that's the mindset, right? Like when you're hustling, your mindset is like, I have to do everything I can.
And also though, you got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
So a lot of these are like, yeah, man, hey, $300 is $300. And I need to take these shows because I'm trying to do this shit full time. And I kind of need that money, especially even that sort of next tier of artists where maybe, okay, you have the agent and you're playing and you're just like, yo, I'm going to say yes to everything because I just maybe quit my full-time job. What would you recommend? Because that's another position a lot of people are in where they're like, hey, I'm on the cusp. I want to go full time. Maybe I'm not there yet. Maybe I'm making a little bit of money. Like, what do you recommend to people that also just need to pay the bills and survive?
Yeah. So from my years of being in this industry, I've seen so many people have full-time jobs and they would legitimately learn how to produce from like midnight to 6 a.m., sleep 2 hours, and then go work all day.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you want it that bad, you're going to make it happen. But when we go back to that whole like playing more is better, that's the wrong mindset. For example, I have an artist who I believe should be a headliner today. And he has essentially direct supported like 4 or 5 tours in a row. And to me, that's bad because not only can you get known as like a local DJ in a certain city, you can also be sort of like branded as like a support act and, you know, be a perpetual support act because all the big headliners are going to see, oh, this guy or girl was support on this tour and that tour and this tour. He'd be great because, you know, he's worth a lot of tickets. Maybe he'll support my tour.
Yeah.
And this artist is thinking, well, if they're going to pay me whatever, $1,000, which is below my normal fee, but I get to play 40 shows, I'm going to make 40 grand and I'm going to play for a bunch of people. But if you keep doing it over and over again, and I know it's comfortable to do that, you're going to be branded, like I said, as a perpetual support act and you never really essentially take that jump to being a headliner. So when I started working with some of these people, I said off the bat, like, you're ready to be a headliner. We're going to starve you in every market. And I know it's going to hurt your wallet. But if you want to get to that next step, you have to make sacrifices. And that's the thing. We've all made that sacrifice. We've all had to eat, you know, Taco Bell 3 times a day for months.
Yeah.
Because when you do a headline show, you're going to starve the market for 3 months at least. Because obviously when you do whatever, a 30-day headline tour, you're basically hitting almost every of the essential markets in the States. So you're not going to be able to play, you know, several months prior and several months after. So it's hard. But I just think like every step along the way, there's a hurdle. And after every step that you make, there's a bigger hurdle.
Yeah.
Because it gets harder as you go along. The bigger you get and the more momentum you have, the harder it gets. Because as you get up to the more rarefied air, there's bigger artists that you're competing with. And it's harder because then it comes with a lot of stress because, like, for example, I headlined Red Rocks in November. I think it's like 9,400 tickets. And I made the mistake to get the ticket audit email every day of the sales. And so every day I wake up at 6 a.m. and I get this ticket count. I'm just stressing about it because I'm like, dude, we only sold 4 tickets last night, you know, and you have to do everything you can to sell tickets. I think on the back end of that, like I said, not only thinking that, you know, if I make this music, I'm going to blow up. It's also thinking in a business mindset because I market and promote my shows on a daily basis. Like I'm boosting ads, I'm putting out ads on Facebook and Instagram and all this stuff. And I'm out there hustling. It's not, to me, yes, there is a major promoter involved in the show, but they have 400 shows a year or whatever they're going to have.
Yeah.
They're going to essentially put you in their cog and go like this. And it's not going to be a special, like, you know, you're not special. So they're going to just put out there, here's the weekly shows this week. Here's the weekly shows next week. And you don't get any like extra special time to be in front of the people in your market. So what do you have to do? At me as an artist, I go out and promote my shows as well on top of that.
Yeah. And spoken like a true promoter and someone who promoted shows for 10 years that understands that as the artist, yes, there is the official promoter of the event, but you are the co-promoter of the event too. It's not just up to somebody else. Same thing with management, right? It's like, yes, you have a manager, but you also still need to manage yourself, right?
Yeah.
You can't just put everything else onto somebody. And I think that is a great headliner mindset to have. And I want to rewind just a couple seconds as well, back to what you talked about. There's a great headliner strategy, like specifically of you got to say no and kind of pull back on some of these opening support slots and being the support person on the tour. And that's definitely the strategy side of it. But I think there's a big mindset piece there to highlight as well, which is starting to see yourself as the headliner.
Yeah.
And not seeing yourself just as the support person. Like there's an identity piece tied up in that as well, that like, I do have what it takes to be the headliner of my own shows. I do have what it takes to be the headliner of my own tour. And it's like, you got to believe it before you see it.
Yeah. And I think there's a big confidence factor in that. And I think if you've already made the leap to want to be an artist, I think you already have that confidence. I would hope.
It's just levels. It's just the next level of it.
Yeah. And like, so a thing that I do with my artists, like, for example, you obviously know Sullivan King, you're his first manager, Keaton.
Yeah.
And I manage an artist called Vastive, and he's from DC, and you know, he's been he's amazing. I don't know if I sent you any of his music, but he comes from DC. He was just a local guy. He sings, he produces, he's amazing. And we started working together, and we got him on the whole Sullivan King tour as the opener. He was the first act of 4. And he went across the whole country, played for thousands of kids, and I said, 6 months before this tour started, I said, look, we're going to make you a headliner. As soon as this tour is over, we're going to have shows ready to go, because you're going to get off this tour and all these other, I call them sharks. I know sharks sort of like a negative, but the headliners are going to see you on that tour, and they're going to come calling for you to go on their tour, because they know you just played for thousands and thousands of kids every night on Sullivan King, right? And that's how that cycle goes. And that's because it's comfortable.
Yeah, you get stuck there.
You get stuck there. And because whoever it is, you know, say Excision says, I want to have you on my tour now, because he knows that you just played for thousands of kids. And
that's a hard one to turn down.
No, I guess Excision's the wrong. He's the wrong. But so I already had the plan in place 6 months before this tour started. And so the tour ended in May. The Sullivan King tour ended in May. So we're doing some other shows and some support for big shows, but he's already got his first headline tour locked down next year, ready to go.
Wow.
And so anything we get the rest of the year is, you know, just kind of cake for him as far as building up his money.
And I like that you said you already had that plan in place, because it really goes to show, one, just your mindset as a manager who's been in this game for a long time, but also this long-term thinking of how this whole thing is a chess game. Right? Where, okay, I'm not just thinking about the release that I'm putting out this week and my what I'm doing in the next 30 days, which is oftentimes sort of the perspective and mindset of what we're looking at. What am I doing for the next month? Maybe people are thinking that far in advance, as opposed to what am I doing the next 6 months? What am I doing the next year? And what's the bigger chess game that I'm playing here?
Yeah, like the thing that I was taught as an artist, and that, so I'm very fortunate, because my first big tour I went on, I was the opener for Excision. This was 2016. So as soon as that tour is over, my agent and I already had a plan ready to go to play a bunch of shows. But for Vastive, who has his own headline tour, we sort of selected a lot of the smaller venues across the country, like 200, 300, 400 cap.
Yeah.
Venues that we're confident we know we can sell, because what do you want from that first tour? We know it's not a moneymaker, but in the minds of all the people who are going to go see that headline tour, they say, whoa, he's a headliner. And they don't, like, say you live in Portland, you know your venue in Portland, but you don't know all the other 30 venues across the country that are 200, 300 cap. And when you see Vastive sold out, what does that do? That creates that demand, and that perception of him is like, dude, he's selling out all these shows and his tour's hitting my spot.
Yeah.
And next month, I better buy a ticket now, because it's going to be sold out.
Yeah. Back to that perceived brand value.
100%.
Yeah. But you're also creating the value as well by creating that perceived value. It's creating actual value too.
Yeah. I still do it as Bear Grillz today. Like I sold out my show last Friday in Portland. I think it was like 1,500, 21 and over capacities. And we announced the show 30 days prior. And we just sort of was like, all right, let's just do it. We're not playing Portland this year, not till the tour. So we did it, sold out. And everything you see from Bear Grillz the next day is like, thanks for my sold out show. Here's a picture from my sold out show. Because in you don't even think about it. But as people who are looking at my social media, they're seeing sold out, sold out, sold out.
Yeah.
And then when I announce a show in your city,
yeah, better grab that ticket.
they're going to remember shit. Every show he's been posting is sold out. I need to grab that ticket right now.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's how you create that perception.
Damn. Well, let's take a few steps back, because I think for a lot of listeners out there that might not be there yet, what can people do to get there, right? If you don't have a manager, you don't have an agent, what are the things you should really be focusing on?
Yeah, I think obviously brand awareness is, creating a brand that's unique and cool. I have a couple artists that I manage who sort of didn't really have a brand. They just had a name, and I'm not going to name names, but I said, look, he was a Caucasian guy. And I said, look, you're just a white guy who plays dubstep. No offense. But there's a million other white guys who just play dubstep.
Bro, I say that probably 4 times a week. At least on calls and people. I'm like, yo, there are so many other just white dude DJs out there. So what the fuck is going to be different about you?
Exactly. Like
back to supply and demand. We have
like Nightmare is a great example of that. His branding, he doesn't necessarily have something attached. Like Nightmare doesn't mean anything. Whereas like Jaws, for example, he's got, a shark and he's got the whole branding behind him. And they're both white dudes. No offense, but Nightmare had to have superior music and releases and features and big artists that he collabed with and big artists who sang on his tracks to sort of separate himself.
Yeah.
In reality, Nightmares, it's not typical because the majority of producers who are coming up are essentially making music to sound like everybody else, right?
Yeah.
So how do you separate yourself if you're just making music to sound like everybody else, especially if you're just a random white guy that is in a sea of random white guys?
So how do you create a dope brand?
That's a $1 million. Exactly. If I knew, I would create 12 of those dope brands. But
hey, what you do is you come over to the Cult Creatives and you hit me up and we fucking run you through our process. That's what you do.
Yeah, no, but yeah, so you got to come up with something that's cool and, not overdone. So,
like put a big ass bear on your head.
Exactly. That was not done before, but we can go over a million of these DJs or artists who have sort of, made the right branding to distinguish themselves from everybody else. Because at the end of the day, if I would have just been DJ RJ and made the music that I make, nobody would have cared.
Yeah. And this is the other conversation I find myself having multiple times a week as well, is that a lot of people are making music and then skipping straight to marketing. They're like, okay, I made the music. Now let me go market myself. Let me get on social media. Let me put myself out there. And then they're struggling because they're just pushing a boulder up the hill, being like, why is this not working? Like, I'm not getting any traction. And it's like, well, you created the product, but you haven't created the package for the product yet.
Yeah.
Right? If you're going to go sell this product to the marketplace, well, there's 50,000 other products that are exactly the same. So you need to create a really cool, interesting, emotionally engaging package.
Yep.
And the example I always use is like Apple is one of the strongest brands in the world. When you buy a new laptop, a new MacBook, and you get that sexy ass box that it comes in and it's got like the laminate on it, is like, it has like a smooth finishing touch. You open it up, it's sitting in that little foam case. You peel the thing back. It's like, it makes you fucking feel something.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to if you buy a Dell computer, they ship it to you in a brown box. It just shows up on your doorstep. There's nothing exciting about it. It might even be a better product.
Yeah.
But there's nothing exciting about it. And so that branding piece is, I think it's getting skipped over so much, and that is the big thing that separates you from the rest.
Yeah, 100%.
Or you just have music that's so fucking good.
But that's 1%. That's less than 1%. That's
for sure.
So that's my thing, is like I only take on artists who I believe have that edge in the branding, because ultimately that's gonna be a big difference maker.
Yeah. It's fun too. Like, I love diving into that stuff and having those conversations. Like, some people perhaps maybe feel like everything's already been done. But like, I don't know, give me an hour and we'll come up with some shit that hasn't been done before. Like everybody has their own little unique flavor. I feel like everyone has it inside of them. And sometimes you just need someone else to come in and help you like pull that thread out. And there's always something there, you know?
Yeah, I think like you look at John Summit as a great example. I know, so house music is a little bit more mature of an audience. So a lot of those guys just use their first and last name. Dubstep, they don't do that. We need those brands, and you know. But John Summit, he sort of took that whole going on a bender and, you know, I'm drunk and I'm high, and it worked. And now he's one of the biggest DJs in the world in like record time. And, you know, he obviously had that hit recently, but up until then, like he didn't really have any big distinguishable hits that separated himself from everybody else. But everybody was talking about him because he would say shit on Twitter that was just like, oh my God, did he really just say that? Did he really, you know, do what he, you know? So that's a great example. I tell people about John Summit, like he literally just shoved his way in, and he's there now.
And that's where when all the pieces come together and it's like the music is there, the brand is there, the marketing is there, the networking is there, like the doors are, but like that's when stuff has that fast rise to the top. But also the other piece, and you can see how he's kind of done it as well. And a lot of that probably is just natural and organic. He's a party boy. He's just leaning into his personality. But I always say it's like, we're going to take that thing, whatever it is that we find that is unique and interesting about you, and we're going to crank it up to 11.
Yeah.
Crank that shit up, right? And I think for a lot of artists, especially, they're also really playing it safe. And so that's the place to lean into is like, what, like you said, what's edgy? Right? What's maybe a little bit controversial? What's something that you can make remarkable, as in people are going to make remarks about it, right?
Yeah.
I think it's like if you want to get attention, you want to create some buzz, you want to get people interested in you, then like push the boundaries a little bit. That's what we're here to do as artists. Like push the fucking boundaries. If you're staying in the middle of the lane, like you're going to be kind of boring, and there's not going to be that much stuff that's interesting about you. I can't tell you how many people I talk to when I ask them about their brand. I'm like, what's your brand all about? They're like, oh, my brand is about creating music that unifies people and gives them emotional and experience and gets them to see that they have the power to create their own reality. I'm like, bro, as every fucking artist in the world is creating music that like wants to unite. I've like heard this shit 10,000 times and it's fucking boring. What are you doing that's interesting, that's unique, that's different? Give me some fucking juice. Give me some sauce. I like push the fucking boundary. Give me something.
And it doesn't need to always be controversial either. That's the thing. It's like, you know, Lady Gaga is another great example. She obviously very talented, but you know, she was in a sea of other pop singers. Essentially, she showed up to a fucking award ceremony wearing all meat,
wearing a fucking meat suit.
And what did everybody talk about? I mean, people still talk about that to this day.
Yeah.
Is that she literally showed up wearing all fucking steak, meat, raw meat.
It's wild. That is a little controversial.
It is, of course. Like I'm sure
it's just pushing boundaries. Like push the fucking boundaries. As an artist, like either you are staying in the safe zone or you're pushing boundaries. It's like, come on, let's go. Let's get a little fucking exciting around here, you know?
Yeah, like for me personally, I went on the Jerry Springer show and revealed myself.
Oh yeah.
And that was a big turning point for Bear Grillz because 2 million people watched that show.
And just to be clear, revealed your identity. Took off your mask. Didn't reveal yourself in that way.
Yeah. So, you know, like I look back at that and I still can't go to a show that I play without at least one person bringing that shit up. Like one person, every show is like, dude, I saw you on Jerry Springer. Like I did, you know, that was a huge deal for me. And I remember thinking like, this is the biggest troll of my life and of my career, but it worked. Everybody talked about it and people still talk about it to this day.
Yeah.
And that was huge. But like what I tell my guys, like you have to find those moments. You have to find how you're going to distinguish yourself. It's not easy.
Did you see a big uptick after Jerry Springer?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, I come from doing PR and publicity at a major label. You know, it was my first job out of college, was doing PR at Capitol Records, and the national television spot is the highest, most valuable PR you can ever get, right? It's like you can get on blogs, or you can even get the cover of Rolling Stone. You can get into magazines. You can get all these other forms of PR. But that TV spot is just the fucking golden mecca.
Yeah, so I sort of was able to plan out the timeline. So I was on this Excision tour 2016, and then as soon as that tour was over, the Jerry Springer thing hit, and 2 million people watched that show. And then 2 months later, I set off on my first headline tour. So I like lined these things up, perfectly. And it was just weird because when you're an anonymous artist and you're up there playing, nobody knows who you are. But I'll never forget the first show I played after Jerry Springer. I just heard 100 people screaming, RJ, RJ. And I was just like, I was freaking out because I was still wearing, the original suit. I didn't change that for like a year after I revealed myself, but everybody's screaming my name now. And I'll never forget that feeling because it's like, oh man, this all has changed.
Yeah.
It really did.
Well, you will always be RJ in my book. I am so honored to have you on the show today and just to be able to dig in a bit with you, man, because you just have such a wealth of knowledge and wisdom and experience. And like, I'm really so thankful that you're willing to just be a complete open book and just share all of these things with us. It's really incredible. And just, very, very grateful for you and to have known you all these years and to see what you've done. It's fucking rad, man. It's so cool. And you will be in Austin soon, right?
Yeah.
Coming to Austin in next month, I think. So
yeah, in September. Yeah.
All right. I will see you out there.
I appreciate you, man. I love, we've been friends for years. Like I tell everybody, like, you're still one of my oldest friends in the industry. Really. I wish we can know what year we actually met. Cause it's gotta been like 2012 maybe?
Yeah, probably 2012. So yeah, we got it over a decade, bro.
It's crazy.
Let's do another one.
I know, it's crazy. Well, I'm the old guy and I'm Papa Bear nowadays.
I love it, bro. I love it, man. Well, thanks again, dude. And I will see you soon.
Thank you guys. Thanks, buddy. Always good to catch up.